Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a whole new episode. Full steam ahead. Happy New Year. Is the new year of 2024, and we are getting off to a great start. Of course, I'm not by myself. I got my co-host Angel next to me, and we have a special guest with us in the house. Seven-time All-Star, 1999 Rolaids Reliever of the Year, 422 career saves, fourth among Hall of Fame relievers. Astros all-time saves leader with 225. Spent 12 years coaching at the Miller School. This will be his 13th year in Charlottesville, Virginia. Won 3 Virginia state titles as a coach. Billy the Kid Wagner, how is it going? Happy New Year.
Hey, happy New Year to you guys. Off and running, new year, getting started, creating games, starting practices. So, I'm excited. It's always that fun when you turn that clock. Now you're refreshed and ready to go.
Billy, are those titles for softball or baseball?
Baseball,
Baseball? Awesome.
baseball.
I mean, you gotta love when you go onto that field, fresh cut grass, the smell, the clay, the dirt, cleats hitting the concrete. Man, you just love to hear it when it gets to that springtime of high school baseball.
Yeah, we had in our program, we sort of have a year-round program. So we have games in the fall. We have lifting and conditioning and things like that in the winter time and this time. And then we start, the new year kind of flips. Then we start doing individual type work. And, we have a turf field. So, in the northern and southwest or central Virginia, when we get any weather, we're able to kind of get on that field still. So, it's a great opportunity. We're at this today, from today, we're 58 days away from our first game.
Very exciting. I've seen a lot of teams and like high school team, majority of them transition from dirt and grass to a lot of turf fields now in high school. I don't know if that's been a big thing over there in Virginia, but I know in Texas there's been a lot of that going on.
Well, maintenance is a big thing. Not a lot of
Definitely.
coaches, not a lot of coaches have, can do what I can do and be there as much as I can since I've retired. But your assistants are usually they have day jobs, and so when you don't have a lot of hands on deck, so having turf makes it a little bit easier for that one man crew.
Bet you're reminiscing on that turf too in the Astrodome, that Astrodome turf.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is a little bit better than that Astrodome. I mean, you were pretty much playing on concrete. They just had a green cover on it. That was about it.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I only went to like one game, maybe. I think it was the last season in '99,
Hmm.
but I mean, it was a pretty atmosphere, I bet.
Oh
So
yeah.
let's get the questions going. First question on the board. I mean, how did you become a closer? Because you had closers out there like Raleigh Fingers, Dennis Eckersley, Rich, Goose Gossage. I mean, did you were any of those guys kind of like inspiration growing up, or did your coaches kind of encourage you to, pitch a minimum amount of innings in the regular, like than a regular starter?
No, 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 no. I wanted to be a center fielder.
Oh,
Uh, and so I actually went to college to be a football player, played center field, and couldn't hit. wasn't a good enough hitter for college. Ended up being transitioned into a starter, and so in college I would start a game and then close a couple games. And it wasn't a big deal back then. I mean, to throw like we did back then. Now they would probably lock you in jail because they call it abuse. But back then we were able to go out there. I would throw 170, 180 pitches a game, come back and throw the next day an inning or something to close the game out, and never think a thing about it. Never had arm issues. I didn't have arm issues until I got into pro ball, and then that was more of the just transitioning into you know probably not throwing enough at times, and then just wear and tear. But I think the closing role became an an option when I came up in '96. I was supposed to come up as a starter. I'd started in the minor leagues the whole time, and when I came up, both the closers, John Hudak and uh, shoot, our Todd. can't think of his name right now. And Todd had gotten hurt, and so I ended up taking over that role, and it just kind of stuck. And I mean, I think the guy, Larry Durker was the guy who gave me the real opportunity to kind of like jump into that role and just kind of learn and grow from it. And he gave me that opportunity, and it just stuck.
I mean, it was a good thing Larry Durker did that because you being a small frame, I'd say like what you're about 5'10", 5'11",
Right.
and you're throwing over 100 miles per hour, reminding everybody that you didn't come up as a left-handed thrower. I mean, you threw right-handed originally back in your days, and you're throwing left-handed 100+ miles per hour. And you got guys
Well,
in the big leagues right now throwing over 100. That's over 6 foot.
I don't think you can get to the big leagues unless you're over 6 foot today's game. The way it's a different breed of game baseball now. No, but when I came up, wasn't a lot of guys throwing, that hard. There were guys that threw really hard. I mean, there was. I think Kyle Farnsworth threw, 100. I think there were guys, but I mean, you're not seeing a guy who's of my stature go out there and do that. But it goes to show that, I mean, it's really not about your size. It's about what you can do. We're all blessed in different ways to go out there and do what we do. And so, the Roy Oswalts and guys like him, I think, Altuve is a great example. I get Dustin Pedroia, I think, Ecksteins, and I think they all show that you don't have to have this monster size to be dominating and able to play at those levels. It's just, you have to work a little harder, and you have to take care of yourself better than some of the big guys do. But that's what we wanted to do, and I think having that closer mentality of just every inning. It made it easier for me too. I love to play. I hated sitting, and so having the ability to go out there and play 5 days a week made it something that made it enjoyable for me.
So I want to add a little bit to that. So we see these closers coming in with like this epic music and night features. Was there a song or something that motivates you to get into that closer role you spoke about?
No, I wasn't motivated by music. I think Bagwell pretty much gave me the Enter Sandman when I came out in '96 because of in the Astrodome they kept playing George Strait's "They Call Me the Fireman," and he just was not having any of that. He did not like that at all, and so he picked that song, and so it kind of stuck. But I mean, when you're a young player, music's not the motivation for me. Going out there and not getting beat around and facing some of the monsters that we face with Bonds and McGuire and Sosa, those are the guys. That's enough motivation for me.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And speaking of those type of players, Hall of Fame. And that's like the biggest thing going on right now. On January 23rd, that's when the big announcement comes out. And I believe, I mean, honestly, looking at the numbers right now, you're heading in the right direction. Let's start off in 2016. You had a 10.5%, 2017, 10.2, 2018, 11.1, 2019, 16.7, 2020, 31.7, 21, 46.4%, 2022, 51%. And last year in 23, 68.1%. Your name is heading in the right direction as we speak right now. We're not going to say no numbers on here because we don't want to jinx or anything like that. But personally, on your side of it, ninth year on the ballot, how are you feeling watching your name trend into the right direction and possibly becoming a Hall of Famer?
Well, it's always an honor to be on that list. And you look around at the players that are on it, you have to be very humble. I think that, the numbers are trending the right way, but, until you get that phone call, to me, it's just, because the numbers have started to trend so well, you're at that point where, you can't help but be excited even more. Earlier, I didn't even pay attention to it because, the numbers were so low, it wasn't even worth really my time to put into it. But I think now when you're looking at there's a strong possibility that you could be a Hall of Famer. I mean, I think he can't help but be excited and I mean nervous. And I think what Jesus Ortiz and a lot of the people told me is that it's going to be down to the wire. It's going to be it could be close. And so and I think that makes it tougher because I think the Hall of Fame called me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to sit around and on the day of the unveiling, and if we call you, we want you to be able to be on the phone." And I was like, "Probably not going to do that. I'm not good with disappointment, and I've got coaching a team. I have obligations, and I can't even imagine sitting around, waiting till 6 o'clock to get a phone call that may or may not come, and then just being like crushed and having family around. That would be so I told him, I said, I'm not going to promise anything. I said I'll probably have my phone on me on the field just for cases, but phone calls don't always come through where we're at. And so I said if not, if it works, great, but I'm probably not going to do that. I'm not good with disappointment.
How about your kids, real quick? Getting not too big off topic, but your kids and obviously high school baseball. Are they always talking about this with you? Like, Coach, you're a Hall of Famer. They need to put you in, Coach,
No,
and like all
never.
these type of
No.
questions. Never.
These kids I mean, you're talking about high school kids. High school kids have no idea what's going on except for themselves. They have no idea what's going on. And they should. They shouldn't be thinking about what's going on with me. But yeah, I mean, literally, right now, half these kids have no idea. You know, their parents have more of an idea than the kids. But no, and that's good because they need to stay focused, and it helps me to stay focused and keep my mind off of those things and allow me to do what I do. So, but they're not. It's not a day to day thing. I mean, they keep it if they are, it's hush hush because I haven't heard anything.
Well, a lot
Yeah,
of Astro, real quick, a lot of Astro fans, Mets fans, Braves, whatever teams you've been with, I think they're all pulling for you this year, man. Honestly.
Well, I appreciate it. It'd be nice. It would. It'd be nice to be able to go in and enjoy that environment, that experience. Because there's going to be a lot of guys. I think Beltran gets in. I think Maurer looks like he's heading in the right direction. I think Joe will get in. I think I'm really hoping that Chef gets in. I really am. Chef's one of my favorite teammates. He's just a great person. Was a great competitor and just. I truly enjoyed competing against him. And, I mean, when you look at his numbers, they are bar none. I mean, he should have been in years ago. I mean, I hate that it's turned into a political situation when you're talking about Hall of Famers instead of the numbers. But I tell you, Chef is just a tremendous player. And I hope him and a lot of the other guys, I hope Andrew Jones finds his way into the Hall of Fame because, I mean, these guys Glavine and Maddox and Smoltz, they're not where they were. If it's not for him, I mean, he was a difference maker for those guys. And I mean, you could show a year worth of his highlights again with those guys pitching that created those wins and the low ERAs for him. So I tell you, Andrew was a tremendous player, and I just I hope he gets his just due. And one of my former teammates, Bobby Brayu, I hope he finds his way into that as well. But I'm excited. I think Beltran and some of these guys, they'll start to find their way into the Hall of Fame, and it'll be great.
yeah. There's like a bunch of debate on what the merit should be for the Hall of Fame, but my thing is pitching got a whole lot harder compared to those like Hall of Famers that were in the 50s, the 60s compared to now, and like the 90s, 19, it got so much difficult. So I think the merit, like what you said, I think Beltran should find a way, Sherfield as well. But let's talk about if you were to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, you would be the sixth person from Virginia and the eighth relief pitcher. What does that mean to you? And like to be if you were to get the call.
Well, if I get the call, I think it's a great, it's such a tremendous honor. But I think it just shows what hard work and commitment to craft and I and I never want to leave out that I was on for 16 seasons. I was on tremendous teams and had tremendous teammates that made tremendous plays for me to allow me to be successful and for our teams to be successful. But from looking in Virginia and where we're from, I mean, I don't know if there's words that can mention, because I think it goes deeper than just an honor. It's one of those things for the people in Southwest Virginia, where I'm from, to look back and say there is, you can, this is possible. And so, I like to use it as a sounding board that, don't give me excuses that you're from a small town or something. If it's doable, you can do it. And so, I think those are things that just gives me a better sounding board for the young adults that I'm around. And I think it gives me a little bit more voice in the world of high school and college baseball, to be able to talk on what the work ethic needs to be for our kids.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Real quick with your numbers to tell everybody: 2.31 ERA, second among Hall of Fame relievers. 11.92 strikeout per nine. That's first among Hall of Fame relievers. 85.9 save percentages, third among Hall of Fame relievers. Uh, Opponent batting average, you had a 187. That's first among Hall of Fame relievers. 599 hits per nine innings, first. Second among lefty closers, of course, John Franco has the most saves as a left-handed Hall of Fame reliever. And then 997 whip, second among Hall of Fame relievers. The numbers are there, Billy.
Yeah.
I mean, all
I
the
don't know
Hall of
what to put up
Famers,
against.
everybody got to see that you're one of the guys right there with them. So,
No, it's not a numbers thing. It's not a numbers. It's unlike back in the early days. I mean, I think, yeah, and I think it's hard to not be biased. I think,
mhm.
we all have our favorite players. We all have our favorite people we like to go to for interviews. I don't think, I think in today's society, it's not um, it's more about what you believe in. I mean, believe me, I have been labeled so many things and people would be surprised if they saw me outside of baseball, because on the field I was very type A and very, I'm having to fight guys who are cheaters. I'm fighting against those guys. I'm having to compete against those guys, and so I have to be better, and I have to keep working harder. And so, yeah, there's an edge to me when I was pitching in the ninth inning, and I think at times that could come off as in a bad way to certain writers and stuff like that, because they like to take my upbringing as being a certain type of person, and once you get to know me, I think everybody gets a difference, and I think that's why the numbers are so important. And I think it's the character within your baseball career, not the character outside of your baseball career,
Mhm.
because you really don't know if you've cheated, you shouldn't be in. There's no doubt. I mean, that's the number one criteria. If you've cheated, you should not be in. And so when you've went out and done it the right way, and your character shows game on and game in that you're accountable and that you do the right things when you're supposed to do, I think you should be rewarded for that when it comes to that. And if your numbers are good enough to be Hall of Fame quality, then that's the reward you get. Not everybody's a Hall of Famer because they did the right thing. It's because that's what you were supposed to do to begin with. I think being a Hall of Famer is just having longevity, putting up the numbers, and you can't have longevity without numbers, and you can't have numbers without longevity. So I think when we put ourselves into, what is character and what is the criteria for a Hall of Famer, it's not your political beliefs, it's not your religion, it's not your preferences. It's truly about your numbers and about what you did while you were on that baseball field that creates who you were in the player and your players, teammates, and for your team. I think that's how it should be. But I think it's very hard not to be biased. And I mean, we all have like I said before, our favorite players.
Completely agree. I mean, that is 100% correct. But talking off Hall of Fame now, let's get to your coaching background. We recently talked to Morgan Ensberg about his coaching path. And the first thing he's told us was after his baseball career, coaching was his calling. How about you? I mean, was coaching always on your mind after finishing your baseball career?
Yeah, it actually was. My high school coach was very important to me. I thought high school for me coming up was that was how I felt like I was in the big leagues when I was in high school. My high school coach just made me feel so good, and I wasn't very big. I wasn't, the guy that they were like, oh, that guy's most likely to go get to the big leagues and do any of that. But he made us feel that way, and how we took the field, how the discipline was when we were on the field, and excuse me, and I think those were things that translated. And so as soon as my career was over, and I also feel like the coaches that I had going through the minor leagues and in college and the minor leagues and in the big league life that gave me tidbits on how to be a coach and how I want to be, how I want to teach kids. And I think when I got out and wanted to be around the game, I think high school was the obvious choice, but just because you have so much that you have more time with them, you can create more, of a relationship with these kids, and where you can grow and teach them the real game. I think at a really good level, and not take the high schooler out there and go, hey, this is how big leaguers do it. Because when you're 5'3" and 100 pounds, big leagues looks millions of miles away, and so you got to teach kids how to be successful at where they're at. And so being a high school coach is probably one of the greatest callings I've had, to be, to have a chance to mold and really show kids about our game. And it's harder every single day because of, what you're able to post on social media and the anxieties that these young men and women have today. And so that for me is, I think, God's calling for me to be there and to kind of talk a lot of these kids off the ledges, because they feel like, it's so hard to get to college. Pro ball is just ridiculous, and they want to make bad choices sometimes to get to these things. And I feel like what I've come through as a small time college player and getting into pro ball and fighting against the monsters that I fought on the field gives me the leeway to really talk to these kids and show them that you don't need that to be successful.
Oh yeah, like based on my teaching background, I think that's one of the things I strive for too, is to motivate students in any way possible. I also I'm a fourth grade teacher, so I try to use sports, whatever they are into nowadays, to kind of get them going. But I read an article that our editor in chief, Jesus Ortiz, wrote about your upbringing and how you motivate these students. And what really caught my attention is how you have, before the season starts, you have them write on a whiteboard what motivates them, what their goal is. How did that come about? And I think that's awesome, by the way.
Well, I think everybody needs to know what they're striving for. For some it might be to be a better person, and it goes further than wins. You might want to have a better living. You want to make a better living for your family. You might want to get that scholarship so your family doesn't have to pay money. You might what inspires you. It might be beating a certain team. And it might be, for me, it was something of hunger. Growing up with in food stamps and a red ticket, that was something that motivated me. And living in that type of setting, me and my mom, that motivated me to want to be better and stuff. And so, I'm sorry. So that motivated me to be better. For that being. And so when you get into that tough situation, really wanting to make sure that in the hard times, you knew how to bow your neck and really toughen up and strive for that purpose. And when those days came and you're running that extra sprint that you didn't want to do, or you didn't want to do that extra homework, or you didn't want to do these things, those were things that drove me, because you know what? There's nothing worse going through a line where you're having to show a red ticket that you can't pay for your own food, and that you're going through the line where you're paying for your own welfare, and these are things that motivated me. And so every kid's different today, and we all want better, but we still have to find something that motivates us and makes us committed to being the best player that we can be. And so every day they have the opportunity to come in there and write something new that motivates them. And and some of it is they're age related, but sometimes you get that one who talks about winning that scholarship so my parents can save money, or something that becomes a little less selfless. And so that's what you're always looking for, and you're trying to build that leadership through selflessness. And those are the things that I think are teaching and coaching points of interest, because now you're raising quality men and women instead of just uh, baseball players.
That's awesome. And yeah, I think Lorenzo and I can relate to that. Like we both grew up in like let's say come based part of Houston. Both had single mothers, and we both went to the same school. I luckily went to the same college as well. So yeah, I can relate to that as well. Just finding that purpose of why we do things, and like knowing that and striving by that. Finding that little niche that motivates you. Was there a person or something that was crucial to your success in the major leagues? Like
Oh
knowing.
yes,
I can
oh
talk.
yes.
Can you talk us a little bit more about that?
I think the greatest motivation, and I like this for all of our kids today. And for me, the greatest motivation was the people that said I couldn't do it. The people that were like, "Oh, you're too little. You're too this. You're too poor. You're too little. You're too this. Whatever. You're too slow. Whatever." I use that as the examples, and I'll be honest with you. Every one of my kids, they have not grown up. They have not been the kid that stepped on the field and was the best player. Have not one time have they ever stepped on and went, "Oh my God, that's Wagner, and he's going to be great." No, they've always been undersized, little. They've had to work because of just where we come from, and and plus that. But the whole Billy Wagner, this is your son, he's supposed to be good, and he's little, and he's not very good. I've used that. I mean, they've had coaches, and I've stayed away younger not to coach them for a reason. And each one seems to have that coach that gives them that step, and because they go, well, you're not very fast, and you're not very good. You're not going to make it to play college. I couldn't tell you how many times I've been frustrated as a father to watch my sons and daughters mistreated by coaches. But I also tell them in that respect, that's your motivation. Don't be upset about it. Use that to spur the fire and to do that. And it's very hard when it's like reading a bad article. When you've had a bad game and you go out there and this guy just lights you up about how bad you were that game and not throwing strikes and you couldn't get people out and you lost the game and you're the worst player ever. Instead of sitting there being hateful and being a jerk to that reporter, I use that as fuel because learning the game and learning that you got to use those things to motivate, not to bring yourself down and put yourself in the pity pool. And I think that's what I talk to these kids about. I'm like, hey, you're going to have naysayers, and you're going to have people that say you can't do it, and that you need to do things, and you got to find people around you that are positive. But you also need those people that sit there and motivate you, and you got to have that guy who tells you you're not very good. I mean, I can't even tell you. I remember. I mean, my oldest son's in AAA with the Astros right now, and we're in. I think it's maybe his first or second year in travel ball, maybe third year in travel ball. We go to a new team, and his coach, they're running 60s, and he's slower than molasses. I mean, he can't outrun a shadow. And I mean, and he had size 13 feet. He was 5 foot nothing with 13. I mean, looked awkward. Running looked weird anyway. And this coach is just beating on him about, oh, you're not going to be fast. You're not even going to make it. You can't play like it. You're not very, just wore him out. And I remember he said this right from his team. And I'm pissed. But I'm sitting here and my son's crying and I remember walking up to him going, you should look at that man and you should thank him because he just gave you what it's going to take for you to get to where you want to go. And I said, when you give him your Hall of Fame speech, you'll be able to sit there and say, thank you for doing this for me. And that's how I felt when I was growing up and had those things. And it was hard. It's a hard thing to figure out, but I think it's one of those things you sit there and you go, I'll show you. And that's what I tell all of my kids that I coach, my kids, and that's how I felt. So, it might come off a little rigid at times, but that sometimes you need that to be your motivation. And everybody can't grow up and go, man, I want to be Ricky Henderson, even though that's who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Nolan Ryan, Ricky Henderson, and Dale Murphy all in one. But that's a tough call. So, but you have your heroes, and then you have the guys that really motivate you. And I think it comes in various ways.
Yeah, we kind of saw a glimpse of that following the advice with Will last spring training. I feel like he came under the radar and made a big splash in spring
Mhm.
training, and I feel like more people started knowing his name a little bit more. So I think he's trending in the right direction as well.
Yeah, he's a hard worker, and it's the best thing that he can fly under the radar because, you know, he'll make his name, and that was what we told him. You know, we went from like going, he's probably not going to get drafted to, all of a sudden he's batting in the three hole on every team, and I mean, you wouldn't be surprised. I mean, people that were upset that he is batting ahead of guys that were drafted ahead of him. So I mean, the draft is important, but you know getting your foot in the door is the most important part. And you take you and I think Altuve has a great story of how his adversity gave him the ability and motivation to be where he's at today. And I think that's when you look at it that in those ways, I think that's the inspiration you're looking for. That's what you guys are looking for, and that's what kids should look for. I mean, we all want to be Bryce Harper, and we all want to be Mike Trout. Lord, I'd love to look like that when I was coming out of high school. But sometimes you have to look like a Billy Wagner and an Altuve and a Pedroia and a David Eckstein to be able to go out there and do these things. And I think those are the role models that are more uh, you can see more likeness to than going out there and seeing some of these monsters that unless you're up close to them, you have no idea what you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, there were monsters on the baseball field. Altuve winning an MVP, Pedroia winning an
Yeah,
MVP,
Yeah,
Eckstein winning a World Series MVP. I
yeah.
mean, those guys were monsters on the field as well.
Absolutely, that's and I think that's the guys that when I talk about that's who probably motivates me because and I played with them and against them and it's fun to watch that because the first thing, well, how are you doing it? You're so little. How there's nothing better than hearing that because you're sitting there when they are winning their MVPs and they're winning these World Series. They're beating the monsters that were supposed to be the monsters, and they're beating those monsters. So I think the motivation and stuff that we look for our kids, and you never know their upbringings or where they came from. It's always hard to know, but I tell you, it's when you look at these guys that have to be a little bit more blue collar, they have to, put in more time. And that's not saying that Mike and Bryce, because I know they did put in a lot of time. They're great players, but I mean, I think guys think that it's just that easy. And when you look at the Pedroias and guys like that, there's a different edge to how they got to where they're at.
yeah. I don't know if you ever saw that picture between Aaron Judge and Altuve
Oh,
next to each other,
yeah.
but Altuve can still turn on that 99-mile-per-hour fastball and take it over the
Well,
field.
baseball is not a size requirement.
Yeah,
It's a heart
Mm-mm.
requirement.
yeah,
And you got to have balls and heart. And when you walk out on that field, you got to have the balls and the heart to compete against whoever it is. And I mean, um, anybody can hit a home run. Anybody can go up there that's got a bat and hit a home run and get that big hit, and anybody can go and get outs. It's just how can you do it consistently? And that's the difference in guys that are the type of players of Aaron Judge and an Altuve. It pretty much tells you that doesn't matter how big; it just matters how much you want it.
absolutely.
Definitely agree. And speaking of people who like influence and that could be a big part of motivation, Brent Strom. Brent Strom was actually your minor league coach, your minor league pitching coach, and coming up in the big leagues as well. How big was it to have him as your pitching coach? Because I mean, the guy's still doing it to
Yeah,
this
still
day.
going.
From the Astros to the Diamondbacks, he's had a huge impact on players. How about you?
A
How
lot
big
of players.
was him to
Yeah,
have early on in your career?
Well, you know what, he was really proud. And I'd had a lot of, I guess, influential minor league coaches: Gary Lucas, Charlie Taylor. Um, but when you get to Brent Strom, it's a whole different function. I mean, he is a mental, he is a mechanic, he is a guy that is inspiring. I mean, I remember pitching as a starter, and my first start as a AAA pitcher, I go 8 2/3, and he's thinking that he couldn't be more complimentary. Pat me on the back, tell me I'm going to the big leagues, and then my very next start, I go 5 innings and just get beat around, and he's like, "Well, you suck." I mean, I think the uniqueness about Brent is how he knows how to work with each player, and I mean, he wants you to be successful, and that's and that goes back to like the Rick Petersons, the Vern Rules. There's a real drive. And I think Brent is the epitome of that guy who wants you to be successful, not just because he wants to win, but he cares about you as a person. And Brent was he was super for me. And I mean, we did drills, and at a time when I was very immature and didn't know how to do the drills, and I wasn't very good at the drills, and I was just very raw. But he's always been very positive with me, even when he was coaching on other teams and things like that. He was just a very positive influence for me. And I mean, it's funny you say that. I spoke to him probably right before Christmas, and just having that guy to lean on and have to be able to talk to, man, it just doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
And that's another guy, a pitching coach like him should probably be looked at as a Hall of Famer too, because of the people that he's gained. They don't get a lot of the publicity, but I mean, good Lord, I would never be where I'm at today if I didn't have coaches around me that could really guide me and teach me the game and do things like that. Those are guys, that probably should get a little bit more of the credit for some of our success than just us.
Yeah, like just a testament of how much of an influence he is. He was really big with the Astros, and in 1 year with Arizona Diamondbacks, they're already in the World Series, and you have Brandon Fat throwing the gem against was it the Dodgers or I think no the Phillies.
The Dodgers and Phillies, I
Yeah,
believe.
Yeah. Well, I just think when you have people that are confident behind you, you have a pitching coach that gives you confidence, can put you in the right place. I think it just speaks volumes of the success that Brent's had through his career. He has had tremendous pitching stats, but it's just how he's built them to be successful. I mean, you can have all the talent in the world, and you can put them out there every day, and they cannot be successful. But if you go out there and you give them confidence, and you're behinding and backing, I mean, there's a way to build that. And I think you look around at the best pitching coaches, the Leo Mazzonis, and I'm not going to sit here and say you ain't got to have talent. I mean, Lord have mercy, how good do you really got to be when you've got super talented players like Roy Halladay and guys like that. I think Rich Doobie doesn't get enough for being a pitching coach in Philadelphia during those years. There's a lot of talent that is and experience and help that these pitching coaches give to these pitchers that are Hall of Famers that probably doesn't get their just due. And I'm really, for me, I'm glad you brought up Brent, because he has changed the game and influenced a ton of people to be into greatness. And I'm just blessed that I'm one of them.
awesome.
Definitely. And another question, and obviously, when everybody thinks of Billy Wagner, from the pitching and coaching, besides baseball, what do you want the people to know about you? What do you want the people to remember about Billy Wagner?
Well, I think the one thing is that what you see on the field was probably not what you saw off the field. On the field, it was 100% every day. Came to work early, left late, and I took it serious. It was not just a situation. I never felt like I was super talented and took it for granted. It was something I came every day with, and I think when you see me off the field, you realize that you know I'm completely different. I'm a little bit more laid back, a little bit more fun loving, a little bit more energy for other people's success than I was. Uh, I think that's something you can't see unless you're around it. I mean, I think that's where, when you talk about the Hall of Fame writers and things like that, it's hard to tell who somebody is when you only see them in certain lights. And so when you talk about character and things like that, and I think character is a big thing, and it's something that is on and off the field. But I think that you know we're all different in different lines and different lights, I guess. I'm not as type A or rigid when I'm coaching a 15-year-old kid about pitching and gives up a hit. I'm not yelling at him. I'm not a big yeller during games, and so I think people see it a little different when they see me off the field. And you'd have to appreciate a Billy Wagner, to appreciate an Altuve, to appreciate any of these kids. I think you have to see them in a full circle. You can't see just one side of them. You have have to be around them. You really have to experience a lot of these things.
That's awesome, and I hope well, like well, not just us, but the city of Houston and obviously playing like Lorenzo said, that we're hoping you get in, and things are trending to the right direction. But our last segment before we let you go, it's called Rapid Fire. It's just a little trivia about
Okay.
your career. See if you remember like
Shoot.
things you
All
did.
right.
So the first one is, who caught your first career save and last career save in the major leagues?
Ooh, my first career save. It's funny. First career saves against oh my God, San Francisco. Is it Tony Eusebio?
It is against San Francisco, but it was Randy Knorr.
Oh gosh,
Randy Knorr.
it was either one of those. I knew Randy's going to kill me. Yeah. That's
What about your last career save?
Brian McCann.
Ryan McCann, former Astro,
Former Astro.
2017 World Series
Yep.
champion. Yeah, it was Ryan McCann against the Phillies.
Yep.
Okay, next one. You've talked about monsters throughout this whole segment. Who were the top 3 toughest hitters you had to face in your career?
Well,
There's a lot.
there is, but I don't think it'll be what you think.
Okay.
I think because it's easy to say the big 3 that everybody wants me to say, but to be honest with you, those were not the toughest guys. It was, Juan Pierre.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
It was, I think, Montpierre was by far, he was so hard. I also think like Jeff Kent.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Mark Grace.
Mark Grace. Jeff Kent too.
Your bigger guys were all one or the other, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all knew when Barry Bonds was coming up. We knew when McGuire was coming up. We knew when Sammy was coming up. There's probably, Todd Helton, Lord have mercy, Chase Utley. There was so many guys, but Barry Bonds was probably up there in that top 2 just because he was different. He was different than McGuire. McGuire was not going to hit a single very often. He was going to hit a home run. Sammy wasn't going to hit a home run. He wasn't facing me to hit a single. The guy, Barry is probably the greatest player I've ever played against, top hands down. But, you could go right at Barry because if he got you, he got you. And, he said that to me before. We've had that discussion of there's no tricks there. I'm not tricking him where Juan Pierre, I had to really pitch. He would foul off 1,000 pitches.
Mm-hmm.
David Eckstein, 1,000 pitches.
Yeah.
You'd be so tired by the time you got to the Bonds and stuff, you'd be like, oh, cow. So those were the guys that really, Renteria. Oh, my gosh. Renteria was one of the best, so many names pop up. But there's a huge list, but and not to really shortcut the guys that the Pujols and Bonds and guys like that. But you knew what you were getting when they rolled up.
Yeah. In a recent interview, Clayton Kershaw stated that Andrew Slater was one of his hardest pitches.
Wilmer Flores too, another one.
Flores, he's those pesky hitters, high contact hitters that they're trying to hit a home run. They're just trying to get on base. I think those are
nightmares. Yes.
And then when we had interviewed Morgan Esbrick, he said that the key to that playoff runs was getting David Eckstein off base as well, because because he said the key what Pujols was gonna do, you knew what those power hitters is just getting the limiting the fire basically.
Yeah,
absolutely, because if they're on base, they're going to create chaos, and then that put guys that were the boppers, the Pujolses, the those types of guys in you had to pitch them different. You didn't have bases open where you had Pujols and guys like that. You could pitch away from contact, and if you walked in, you weren't worried about it. I agree wholeheartedly with Clay, because I just think that's how that was how it was. Nowadays I think it looks when you're watching TV, looks like everybody's 6'5", 280, and I mean, balls just jump off the plate anyway. So, uh, I just think at that point in time, those were the guys who were pesky, and I think a guy in this day and age, it kind of reminds me of a guy that I would is Carroll out of the Diamondbacks.
Oh yeah.
I know he's got home runs but I mean, he takes his walks and he's on base and he's stealing bases and he's brought that threat, and I mean, it's not one dimensional, and I think the guys that are not one dimensional make it so much harder to compete against. It's fun, but it's harder.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. What they're just to get on base, they're gonna battle you as much as they can. Our third question: what season did you have the most saves in your career?
Oh, I have goodness sakes. I have no idea. I want to say 99? 99?
Close. 2001. Do you know the number or no?
40.
44.
Oh,
Close.
yeah.
44.
Yeah. I didn't know. Well, I mean,
I bet you weren't thinking
years.
about I bet you weren't thinking about thinking on this show right now.
Well, yeah, not about myself exactly. So I don't know. When I think things, if I'm thinking about stats, to be honest, and that's just because they're thrown out. But I think they were the on base. I think batting average against, those things always jump out at me. I couldn't tell you like ERA or things like that, but I know that when they talk about who's dominant and you throw out batting average against and stuff like that, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that was. That was 187. I mean, because you go 16 years in the league's hitting 187, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. But Billy, that is all the time we have for today. We really, really want to appreciate
Yeah.
you taking your time out of your day to come on and speak about not just your career, but coaching other kids and what motivates you in life. We really appreciate
Well, I
it.
appreciate that. Well,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you did, and again, thank you, and good luck this season. Hope you bring another state title to your school as well. That'd be
Well, I
Definitely.
amazing.
appreciate it.
Definitely. But January 23rd is the revealing of the Hall of Fame announcement. Like where everybody, Astros fans, Phillies, Braves, Mets, wherever you're listening, everybody's hoping and pulling for you, man. But until then, like I said, on our little ticker in the bottom, follow us at Full Steam Ahead, wherever you get your podcast as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media platforms. But until then, everybody have a safe week, blessed week, and we will talk to y'all next week.
Thanks, guys.